All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're following the incredible journey of ordinary Minnesota public school educators as they take on a massive, totally opaque institutional system. We're going to look at a remarkable forensic financial investigation that reveals exactly what happens when the people tasked with protecting our retirement funds operate completely behind closed doors. This is a real-life David versus Goliath story of grassroots action, aggressive bureaucratic pushback, and literally billions of missing dollars. Imagine for a second that you're a Minnesota public school teacher. It's 9 p.m., you're exhausted, you're grading papers, but you're paying into your puncheon every single paycheck, trusting the state to safeguard your future, right? But then, when you simply ask to see how your money is being managed or what fees are being handed over to Wall Street, the state basically tells you they have no records. Seriously, what do you even do in that situation? Well, for these teachers, it led to a breaking point. There's this powerful statement from the Minnesota Educators for Pension Reform Group where they cited a lack of advocacy, a lack of transparency, and a lack of trust. They stated they felt completely justified in losing faith in a system meant to protect their security. This was their call to adventure. They realized that waiting around for the system to magically audit itself, that wasn't going to work. They had to uncover the truth about their own life savings themselves. And driven by that total lack of trust, almost 3,000 teachers banded together and raised over $78,000 on GoFundMe. That's about $28 a person. They used that money to commission this explosive 60-plus page independent forensic investigation by Benchmark Financial Services. They essentially crowdfunded their own transparency. How wild is that? Which brings us to our first major hurdle: hitting a bureaucratic wall. So as these educators crossed the threshold and started filing basic public records requests, they definitely weren't greeted with open arms. Instead, they were met with absolute institutional panic. The timeline of events is just wild. Before the investigation even got off the ground, officials mobilized. On March 11th, an important matter warning email blasted out to state officials about severe reputational risks. Just 2 days later, teachers got direct phone calls practically begging them to drop their GoFundMe. And over the summer, the chief investment officer of the State Board of Investment held multiple interventions, actively pressuring the group to drop their public records requests. The forensic report documents some genuinely shocking tactics used to thwart these teachers. We're talking preemptive opposition research handed out to the media, national pension groups calling the upcoming findings lies before they were even published. The State Pension Board refused to record their own official public meetings. But get this, a public records request revealed they secretly recorded phone calls with critical participants. They internally labeled one teacher a squeaky wheel and hoarded 97 documents just on her. Next up, we need to talk about the pension sleight of hand. So how exactly did the state dodge these basic questions in the first place? The report describes their bureaucratic setup as a literal sleight of hand. Here's how the loop works. The Teachers Retirement Association, or TRA, handles the administration of benefits, but they admit they don't actually possess the investment documents. Meanwhile, the State Board of Investment, the SBI, sits on the actual $146 billion in pooled money, and they simply ignored the teachers' data requests for months. It's a perfect, endless loop of zero accountability. And here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Because the TRA board literally does not have the documents in their possession, they cannot possibly fulfill their fiduciary duty. I mean, how can you monitor how educators' life savings are being risked if you don't even have the paperwork? They are flying completely blind, which means the teachers, the actual stakeholders, are flying blind right alongside them. Now for the really alarming part, the ordeal of billions in hidden fees. Let's translate these massive Wall Street figures into what they actually mean for everyday taxpayers and teachers. $3 billion. That staggering number is the estimated amount of undisclosed private investment fees paid out to Wall Street by the TRA alone since 2013. They only publicly disclosed a tiny fraction of their fees, keeping the massive costs of high-risk alternative investments completely hidden in the dark. And it actually gets worse. The report estimates the State Board of Investment pays $360 million every single year in fees on what are called unfunded commitments. In plain English, that means paying Wall Street managers enormous fees for doing absolutely nothing with uninvested capital. It is an astronomical drain on the retirement pool. The report also highlights a major warning about zombie funds. Basically, a significant chunk of the state's private equity and real estate holdings are tied up in these failing alternative investments. They extend way past their standard 12-year liquidation period, which just allows managers to sit back and milk management fees off mediocre assets, bleeding even more resources from the pension. Which leads us to the biggest shocker of them all, the $39 billion Mirage. So, the hidden fees are awful, but the realization that the official performance numbers might be completely made up, that was the real gut punch for our educators. To understand this trick, you have to know about something called benchmark bias. This is exactly what happens when a fund compares its highest risk, super expensive private investments to a completely inappropriate benchmark, like simple inflation. If you compare complex private markets to a consumer price index of around 2.5%, well, yeah, you're virtually guaranteed to look like a financial genius. The report points out that the TRA claimed they beat their custom index by exactly 0.2% across every single time period, 1, 5, 10, 20, and 30 years. Now, an independent expert calculated the odds of hitting that exact same return value 5 times in a row. It's 0.0000149. Statistically, it's basically impossible. And when you measure against actual appropriate benchmarks, that fake outperformance is masking a calculated $39 billion in actual underperformance over the last 30 years. All right, let's look at where this leaves us. The fight continues with real stakes and consequences. What does all this abstract math actually mean for the real people relying on this system? Well, this isn't just about spreadsheets. If Minnesota's numbers are misstated, the consequences could be catastrophic. Look at Pennsylvania recently. A minor performance error there triggered FBI and SEC probes, forcing 100,000 public workers to face immediate, unexpected tax liabilities on their pensions. And guess what? The outside consultant involved in Pennsylvania, Aon, is the exact same consultant used by both the TRA and SBI in Minnesota. Yikes. The reality right now is stark. The TRA's funded ratio has dropped to 76.9%. Under federal guidelines, that officially drops this $35 billion underfunded pension right into the yellow zone, meaning it is legally endangered. So this fight for transparency, it's not just some abstract political ideal. It's an urgent, immediate necessity to protect the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of hardworking Minnesotans. So I want to leave you with this final thought. As these ordinary citizens continue their David versus Goliath battle for accountability, we really have to ask ourselves, if transparency truly costs nothing, why did the system fight so incredibly hard to keep the curtain closed in the first place? Who really stands to lose when the facts are finally exposed? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep asking the tough questions.